Welcome back to Silent Husband Club. We've missed you. Sorry for the long silence, but we're back now, and ready to share raw, unforgettable stories every single day. Stay with us. You think you know the person you sleep beside every night until one evening, you're handed a glass of wine, a fake smile, and a bowl full of car keys. What do you do when the woman you love suddenly feels like a stranger? If this story grabs you, subscribe, like, and leave a comment below. It helps the channel grow, and it lets you know when the next story drops. It started like so many nights before, an invitation to one of those parties that had, over the years, become a familiar ritual in our circle of friends. Claire, my wife of 9 years, seemed unusually excited about this one. I remember how long she spent getting ready. She tried on outfit after outfit, until she finally settled on a black dress that clung to her in a way that made me look twice, not like a husband, but like a man watching a woman he hadn't met yet. "You look incredible," I said, trying to catch her eye as she leaned toward the mirror for one last touch of mascara. "Thanks," she smiled, her voice soft, almost playful. But her eyes, there was something in them I couldn't place. Something unreadable. I have a feeling tonight's going to be special. I should have paid more attention to that feeling creeping up my spine. That strange tightness in my chest. But I pushed it away. Claire had been under a lot of pressure at work. We both had. Maybe she just needed to blow off some steam. Maybe we both did. I told myself the party would be a chance to reconnect, just the two of us, outside our routine, outside the stress. That's what I believed. The house belonged to Victor and Denise, a flamboyant couple with more money than shame, known for throwing wildly elaborate get-togethers. Their place was already packed when we arrived. The laughter, the clink of glasses, the thump of bass-heavy music, it all spilled out onto the warmly lit terrace. Claire linked her arm through mine, gripping a little tighter than usual as we stepped inside. We were greeted by Denise, all red lipstick and glittering rings, who immediately pressed drinks into our hands and led us into the main living area. "You two are going to love tonight," she said with a wink that I chalked up to her usual over-the-top energy. Claire eased effortlessly into the crowd, chatting with friends I barely remembered, while I gravitated toward the bar and found myself in conversation with a former coworker. At first, it was the usual party buzz, music, conversations overlapping, people laughing too loud. But something felt off. Not obvious, but just beneath the surface. The air seemed charged with something else, something secret. It wasn't until Denise clinked her glass and called for everyone's attention that the night took a turn. She stood in the middle of the room, glowing with mischief, holding a large crystal bowl in her hands. "All right, folks," she said, her voice cutting through the chatter, "you know what time it is. Let's make things interesting." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Claire stiffened, just slightly. I noticed. Her smile faltered just for a second, and her eyes locked onto Denise like she was bracing for impact. "We're playing our little game," Denise announced, shaking the bowl for effect. "Keys in, ladies and gentlemen. You know the rules." I blinked. Keys? The guy next to me, Nathan, I think his name was, gave me a knowing grin. He leaned closer. "You've never been to one of their key parties, have you?" "Key party?" I echoed, my stomach beginning to churn. He chuckled. "Yeah. You throw your car keys into the bowl. At the end of the night, everyone draws a pair. Whoever's keys you pick, that's who you go home with." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. I turned to Claire, my heart already thudding. "Did you know about this?" She didn't answer right away. Her cheeks flushed, and her gaze fell to the floor. "Victor and Denise mentioned it," she finally said, barely audible over the low hum of conversation. "I didn't think it would be a big deal." Not a big deal? I hissed, trying not to raise my voice. You didn't think this was something you should maybe tell me? I didn't know how you'd react, she said, clearly uncomfortable now. I thought maybe we could just see how the night goes. See how it goes? I repeated, stunned. You're okay with this? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Then Heather's voice rang out. All right, everyone. Keys in, let's go. Applause broke out. Keys jingled. Laughter filled the air. People were actually doing it, tossing their car keys into the bowl like it was the most normal thing in the world. I watched it happen, frozen. The room felt like a bad dream, like a scene I'd stumbled into by accident, a place I didn't belong. Claire turned to me, her expression unreadable. We don't have to participate if you don't want to, she said carefully. But I thought maybe it could be interesting. Something different. I stared at her. My wife. The woman I thought I knew. And in that moment, I didn't recognize her at all. You should have talked to me, Claire. This isn't something you spring on someone. I know, she said softly. I'm sorry. I thought it might be fun. For both of us. I shook my head. I couldn't think. I couldn't even feel properly. It was like my brain couldn't keep up with what was happening. I need air. I stepped outside. The cool night air hit me like a wave. But it didn't help. Inside, the party raged on, as if nothing had happened. As if my whole world hadn't just tilted off its axis. I leaned against the railing, trying to breathe, trying to hold on to something solid in my mind. A few minutes later, Claire joined me, her arms crossed tightly over her chest like she was bracing herself against more than the cold. Ethan, I didn't want to hurt you. Then why didn't you tell me? I snapped. Did you think I'd just go along with it? That I wouldn't care if you spent the night with some stranger? It's not about leaving you, she said, her voice tight. It's about trying something new. Breaking out of routine. This isn't new, Claire. This is betrayal. Her eyes glistened, and she looked away. I didn't think it would be such a big deal. I thought, maybe it would bring us closer. Closer? I repeated. This is tearing us apart. Behind us, I could still hear the laughter, the music, the rising energy of a party that had taken a turn I wasn't prepared for. Claire reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I can't do this, I said. My voice was low, final. I don't even know who you are right now. She dropped her gaze, her shoulders sinking. I didn't mean to lose you. I just wanted more. Well, I said bitterly, stepping away from her, congratulations. You made this night unforgettable. I walked to the car, unsure of where I was going, only certain of one thing, whatever I thought we had, would never be the same again. I drove aimlessly through the city streets, the headlights of oncoming cars blurring into streaks across my vision. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary, but I couldn't relax them. My mind was a mess of noise, Claire's words echoing over and over, twisted in my head. I thought maybe it could bring us closer. The absurdity of it. The betrayal of it. The way she looked at me like I was the unreasonable one. Like I was overreacting. I didn't know where I was going, and I didn't care. I just knew I couldn't be near her. Not after that. Not after watching her consider throwing away everything we'd built, our trust, our vows, our life, for a night of something new. At some point, I found myself pulling up in front of Jason's apartment. He was my best friend, someone who'd seen me through college heartbreaks, job losses, family funerals, all of it. If anyone could help me make sense of this, it was him. I sat in the car for a moment, engine idling, breath fogging up the window. Then I turned the key, cut the engine, and stepped out into the cold night. Jason opened the door within seconds of my knocking, his expression shifting the moment he saw me. No questions, no preamble, just concern in his eyes and a quiet, "Come in." The warmth of his place hit me like a wave. Familiar. Safe. A small couch, a record player humming something low and melancholic in the background, and the scent of coffee hanging in the air. I sank into the couch like my bones couldn't hold me up anymore. Jason handed me a mug without asking what I needed. He just knew. I sat there in silence for a few minutes, holding the mug like it might anchor me. Then I told him everything. The party. The bowl. Claire. My voice cracked somewhere in the middle, and I hated the way it did. I felt pathetic. Weak. But Jason didn't interrupt. He just sat there, listening, nodding when it was needed, leaning forward like he was holding my grief with me. When I finished, there was a long pause. Then he spoke, softly but firmly. "She didn't just blindside you, Ethan. She made a choice before she walked into that party. She chose to cross a line and hoped you'd follow without asking questions. That's not love. That's selfishness." I swallowed hard, the truth of his words digging deeper than I wanted to admit. "I keep thinking maybe I overreacted," I said. "Maybe I'm too conservative. Rigid. I don't know." "No," Jason said. "You're not. You have boundaries. There's nothing wrong with that. What is wrong is Claire trampling over them without giving you the chance to say yes or no." I stared into my coffee like it had answers. But there were none. Just more questions, heavier each time I turned them over in my head. "I don't know if I can trust her again," I said finally. "And if I can't, what does that mean for us?" Jason didn't answer right away. He leaned back, looking tired but clear-eyed. "That's the question you need to sit with. Not whether you're overreacting. Not whether you still love her. But whether you can live with this version of her, the one who did what she did and didn't tell you." We stayed up talking until the sky started to lighten. He offered me the couch for the night, and I accepted. I couldn't face going home. Not yet. Not while she was still there, probably lying in our bed, either too ashamed or too confused to know what she'd done. Or worse, too convinced she'd done nothing wrong. The next morning, I left early. I needed time. Space. I drove for hours, stopping once for gas, once for coffee. My phone buzzed with messages from Claire, not frantic, but quiet. "Please come home. We should talk. I'm sorry if I hurt you." Not once did she say she regretted it. Not once did she say she wouldn't have gone through with it. Just passive apologies and vague attempts at fixing what she'd cracked. When I finally walked back into the apartment late that night, the lights were dimmed and the air smelled faintly of lavender and red wine. Claire was in the kitchen, standing over a pot of something on the stove. She looked up as I entered, eyes wide with the kind of hope that made me ache. "You came back." "I didn't know where else to go," I said, my voice hollow. She nodded slowly, as if that answer made sense. "I made dinner." I didn't respond. Just set my keys down and sat at the table, staring at the wood grain until she brought over 2 plates. We ate mostly in silence. I didn't taste anything. My appetite was gone. Halfway through, she broke the quiet. "Ethan, I never wanted to hurt you. I swear. I thought we were stuck. I thought maybe if we tried something new, we'd wake up. Together. I looked at her. Really looked. Her eyes were glassy, her expression sincere. But it didn't make me feel any better. You didn't wake us up, Claire. You ripped us apart. I thought it would be harmless, she whispered. It wasn't about falling in love with someone else. It was about us. Trying to feel something again. But you didn't ask me, I said. You made the decision for both of us. You stood there, watching people throw their keys into that bowl, and you were ready to be one of them. Without even knowing if I'd follow you. She didn't answer. Just stared at her half-finished plate like it had become too heavy to look at. After dinner, I went straight to the bedroom and closed the door behind me. I didn't lock it, I wasn't there yet, but I needed to be alone. I lay on the bed, fully clothed, eyes fixed on the ceiling. I could hear her in the living room, moving around, maybe cleaning up, maybe just trying to find something to do with her guilt. At some point, the apartment went quiet. And still, I couldn't sleep. The next few days passed in a fog. We coexisted like strangers, sharing the same rooms, brushing past each other, saying only what was necessary. The energy between us had shifted. Something had broken. And even though she tried to act normal, I couldn't forget. I couldn't unsee it. That look in her eyes when she said, I thought maybe it could be interesting. That wasn't the woman I married. Or maybe it was, and I'd just never seen it before. Eventually, I made an appointment with a divorce lawyer. I needed clarity. Direction. A sense of agency, because the ground under me felt like it could give way at any moment. When I sat across from Mr. Callahan, a calm, gray-haired man with soft hands and a quiet voice, I felt like I was signing up for surgery. Necessary, painful, and irreversible. He listened, asked the right questions, and gave me options. There's a path forward, Ethan, he said. But you'll have to decide whether that path includes her or not. I walked out of his office carrying a folder full of forms I hadn't yet committed to. But just holding them made something shift inside me. For the first time since that night, I felt the smallest breath of power return to my lungs. That night, Claire and I sat in the kitchen again. No wine. No soft music. Just the steady hum of the fridge and the ticking of the clock on the wall. I went to see someone, I said. Her eyes met mine, cautious. Who? A lawyer. She didn't speak. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed, but the rest of her was completely still. I haven't filed yet, I added. But I needed to know what my options were. Claire nodded slowly. I understand. I believed she did. And that scared me more than anything else. In the days that followed, the apartment became a vacuum, a space where words had weight but no movement. Claire and I lived like distant tenants. She cooked, I cleaned. I worked late, she went to bed early. Our routines no longer touched. Every conversation was functional. Did you take the trash out? There's food in the fridge. Nothing that scratched the surface of what was still festering beneath. The memory of that night didn't just haunt me, it rewrote the way I saw her. I caught myself analyzing everything, every glance, every silence, every casual phrase she used. I had loved her for almost a decade, but now I questioned if I had ever truly known her. One morning, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, toothbrush hanging from my mouth, staring at the man looking back. I didn't recognize him either. Hollow eyes, drawn skin, shoulders curved like they carried more than just a failed marriage. What terrified me wasn't just losing Claire, it was losing myself somewhere inside that slow collapse. And I realized I couldn't keep drifting in this in-between state. Something had to break. Something had to move. So I took a walk. No destination, just to need to be somewhere that didn't smell like our apartment. I ended up at a small park on the edge of the city, a place Claire and I used to visit years ago. Before work consumed us. Before obligations piled up. Before the distance crept in. I sat on a bench, watching leaves fall from the trees in slow spirals. I felt like one of them, weightless, directionless, headed toward the ground. For the first time in weeks, I let myself feel everything fully. Anger. Sadness. Regret. Even love. Because I still loved her. That was the most painful part. You don't stop loving someone just because they hurt you. That's not how it works. Love is stubborn. But so is hurt. Later that afternoon, I called Jason again. I didn't know what I wanted to say, I just needed a voice outside my own head. We met at a coffee shop downtown. He didn't ask questions, just handed me a cup and waited. When I told him about the lawyer, he nodded but didn't react. When I told him I hadn't filed, he didn't push. Take your time, he said. Just make sure you're not waiting for her to fix it. She already made her choice. Now it's about yours. His words hit harder than I expected. Not because they were harsh, but because they were true. For too long, I had made my choices about us. What was good for us. What might keep us from falling apart. But Claire had already jumped without looking back. I was the one still standing at the edge, hoping the ground might reappear. That night, back home, she was waiting at the kitchen table. She had that look again, the one that made me feel like I was walking into a scene that had already been rehearsed. "Can we talk?" she asked. I sat. Not because I wanted to, but because I was tired of running. Tired of silence. And maybe, somewhere deep down, I still wanted answers. "I've been thinking about us," she started. "About everything. And I know you're angry. I know you don't trust me. But I still believe we can get through this. I still want us." I looked at her, and for a moment, I didn't see betrayal. I saw the woman I married. The woman who used to fall asleep with her head on my chest, whispering dreams about road trips and tiny houses in the woods. But the moment passed. Because what I saw next was the woman who stood beside me in a stranger's living room, asking me to throw away everything sacred just to feel something again. "I don't know if I do," I said, my voice quiet. "Still want us, I mean. I don't know if I can come back from this." Her face fell, but she didn't cry. I think she already knew. Maybe she'd known long before I did. Maybe she'd been preparing for this moment from the second she dropped those keys in her purse that night and walked into Victor and Denise's house pretending it was just another party. "I'll leave," she said. "If that's what you want." I didn't answer. Not right away. I sat with the weight of it, the finality. Then I nodded once, and she stood. She didn't pack that night. But the conversation was done. Something between us had closed, not with a slam, but a quiet click. The next day, I handed the signed papers to my lawyer. The weeks that followed were a slow-motion unraveling of everything we had built. Claire moved out within days of the papers being filed. She didn't fight it, didn't cry, didn't beg. She packed her things with quiet efficiency, taking only what she needed and leaving behind anything that might spark a memory. I watched her go the way you'd watch a storm move off the horizon, not with relief, not with anger, just a numb understanding that the damage had already been done, and now came the cleanup. The apartment felt bigger without her. Emptier, yes, but not in a way that hurt. More like when you remove a picture from a wall and are left staring at the square of cleaner paint behind it, evidence that something once existed, but now it's gone, and you're not sure if you want to fill that space again or just leave it bare. I focused on the logistics, bank accounts, joint assets, the sale of the condo. My lawyer walked me through it all, and I followed each step like a man in a daze. Every signature was a quiet death of a shared plan. Every notarized form another layer of dust settling over the past. But through it all, I didn't break down. I didn't collapse. I think a part of me had already mourned the loss long before we ever sat in front of a lawyer. The grief had been building like pressure under the skin, and now it was simply escaping, slowly and without ceremony. Jason was my anchor through that time. He checked in daily, sometimes dropping by unannounced with takeout and beer, sometimes just sending a stupid meme that made me crack a rare smile. Lauren, my sister, came over on weekends and helped me box up the things that hurt to touch. She was gentle about it, didn't pry, didn't judge, just handed me a glass of wine and quietly sorted through kitchen drawers while I sat on the floor, trying to decide what to keep and what to burn. Family and friends kept me afloat, but the truth was, I didn't talk much. Not really. I didn't know how to explain the kind of betrayal that doesn't come with shouting or slammed doors, but instead, arrives wearing perfume and a smile, asking if you want to try something fun. When the divorce was finalized, I didn't feel liberated. I felt weightless. Not in a good way. Like I could drift off at any moment, and no one would notice. So I did the only thing that made sense. I moved. Found a small apartment near the edge of town, just enough space for one person and some breathing room. It had a view of a quiet park and floors that creaked when I walked too fast. The walls were still white, untouched. I didn't hang anything up. I wasn't ready to start decorating a life that didn't feel like mine yet. I returned to work, buried myself in projects, stayed late without a reason. No one asked too many questions. I think they saw it in my face, that dull, distant expression of someone rebuilding from the inside. And when I wasn't working, I painted. I hadn't picked up a brush in years, but the first time I did, the stroke of color across canvas felt like air filling my lungs for the first time in weeks. I painted quietly, sometimes for hours, sometimes just for 10 minutes, but it helped. It gave me something that wasn't about her. It was mine. And I clung to that like a lifeline. It was on one of those slow evenings, sitting at a cafe after attending a group therapy meeting, something Jason gently suggested I try, that I met Julia. She was sitting 2 tables over, grading papers with a cup of tea and a tired smile. I hadn't spoken to a woman in any meaningful way since Claire. I didn't plan to that night, either. But she saw me sketching in my notebook, a habit I'd picked up again, and leaned over with that kind of open-hearted curiosity you don't expect from strangers anymore. "Is that yours?" she asked, nodding toward the page. "It's beautiful." I looked down at the rough sketch of a tree, nothing special, just something I'd drawn out of habit. "Just a hobby," I said. She smiled, tilting her head. "It doesn't look like just a hobby." We talked for maybe 10 minutes that night. Nothing flirtatious, nothing heavy. Just 2 people who happened to be in the same place, both carrying their own silent stories. But when I left, I found myself thinking about her smile. About the way she listened. And about how, for the first time in what felt like forever, a conversation didn't leave me feeling emptier than before. Over the next few weeks, I ran into her again, by accident at first, or at least that's what I told myself. Eventually, we started meeting intentionally. Coffee turned into walks. Walks turned into dinners. And little by little, I began to uncoil. She never asked too much about Claire, and I never offered more than I was ready to say. She gave me space to be broken without making me feel like a burden. And slowly, carefully, I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was still something good ahead of me. Julia never rushed me. She never tried to fill the silences or force me to say more than I was ready to. Maybe that's what made it possible for me to let my guard down, little by little. Her presence didn't demand anything, it just was. Steady, warm, patient. With her, I didn't feel like I had to be anything other than what I was: bruised, uncertain, quietly rebuilding. And maybe because of that, something in me finally stopped bracing for impact. For the first time since Claire, I allowed myself to want again, not just companionship, but something deeper, something honest. Not perfect, but real. Over time, Julia became more than just a kind stranger in a cafe. She became part of my healing. She came to see my art, even before I thought it was worth showing anyone. When I hesitated to submit my work to a local gallery that was featuring unknown artists, she pushed me gently, but firmly. "Your story deserves to be seen," she said one night, her hand resting on mine. "And you deserve to take up space again." It shook me, hearing those words. Because for so long, I had felt like a ghost in my own life, haunting old memories, afraid to exist fully in the present. But something about her belief in me made it feel possible. The gallery night was quiet, low-key, a dozen or so local artists, wine in plastic cups, murmurs of appreciation bouncing off brick walls. My paintings hung in a modest corner, raw, moody, mostly abstract. But they carried all the weight I hadn't been able to speak. People stopped to look. Some asked questions. Some just stood in silence, nodding to themselves as if they saw something in the strokes that even I hadn't fully understood. And Julia, she stood beside me the whole time. Not as a cheerleader, not as a distraction, just there. Her presence felt like an answer to a question I hadn't known how to ask. As the weeks turned into months, Julia and I grew closer. But not without friction. I still had moments where the past gripped me like a vice, flashes of Claire's voice, the sound of laughter at that party, the weight of betrayal settling into my bones. Sometimes I'd pull away emotionally, retreating into silence or doubt. Julia never punished me for it. She'd wait, give me space, then gently remind me that she wasn't her. That this was something new, something we could shape together, not something doomed to repeat the past. And yet, there were nights when I lay awake, staring at the ceiling in Julia's apartment, wondering if I was really capable of loving again, really loving, not just surviving beside someone. I didn't want to bring ghosts into a relationship that felt so clean, so full of potential. But healing isn't linear. It's messy. It moves in spirals. One night, after dinner, Julia sat across from me on the couch, legs tucked beneath her, and said, "Ethan, if you're not ready for all of this, it's okay. I just need you to be honest." I took a long breath, my throat tight. I don't know what ready even looks like anymore. But I do know I feel something with you I haven't felt in a long time. And I don't want to lose that. Her eyes softened. "Then that's enough for now." We moved forward, slowly, like people testing ice after a long winter, step by cautious step. I met her friends, started going to art shows with her, even opened up about Claire in more depth. Not just the betrayal, but the years before it. The slow erosion of intimacy. The silence we both created and learned to live in. And through those conversations, I realized something I hadn't been able to admit before, that our marriage hadn't died at that party. That was just the final breath. The real death happened long before, in all the unspoken disappointments, the lonely nights, the disconnected days we pretended were normal. That realization didn't excuse Claire's choices, but it gave me context. And sometimes, understanding is the first step toward letting go. One Sunday morning, Julia and I sat on her balcony, coffee steaming in our mugs, the early sun painting the buildings gold. There was a quiet between us, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt full. I turned to her and said, "I think I'm finally okay." She smiled, setting her mug down. "I know." And I believed her. A year after the night that tore my world apart, I found myself back at the same park bench where I had once sat, broken and unable to breathe. But this time, the air felt lighter. The weight on my chest wasn't gone, not entirely, but it no longer threatened to crush me. The trees had changed with the season, gold and amber leaves rustling softly above me. I sat with a sketchbook in my lap, drawing not to escape, but because it brought me peace. Life had not gone back to what it was before, it never could, but it had taken on a new shape. One I had learned to live in, and even love. Claire and I hadn't spoken since the divorce was finalized. There were moments when her name came up in conversation, usually through mutual acquaintances, and every time I heard it, it landed softly instead of sharply. I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't resent her. But I didn't miss her either. She was part of a story that no longer needed to be read. Whatever journey she was on, I wished her peace, the same kind I had spent months clawing my way toward. The same kind I had almost convinced myself I didn't deserve. With Julia, everything felt different. Not perfect, not dramatic, just real. We didn't talk about forever the way Claire and I used to in those early, naive years. We talked about today. About being present. About choosing each other, even on the hard days. We laughed, a lot. We argued, sometimes. But even in disagreement, there was respect. We both seen the damage dishonesty could do. So we didn't lie, not even the small, polite kind of lies that couples often tell to avoid friction. If I was hurting, I said it. If she needed space, she asked for it. That was our currency, honesty, even when it was uncomfortable. One evening, I received a call from Jason. We hadn't caught up in a while, work had kept us both busy, life pulling us in different directions, but when we sat down at that familiar corner cafe, it was as though no time had passed. He looked at me across the table and said, "You're not carrying it anymore." I raised an eyebrow. "The weight," he explained. "It's not in your eyes like it used to be." I smiled. "That's because, for once, I actually know who I am. And I like that guy." Julia was waiting for me when I got home that night. We made dinner together, nothing fancy, just grilled vegetables, pasta, and wine. We hadn't even bothered to chill. Music played from a dusty speaker in the corner, and when she caught me staring at her, she asked, "What's that look for?" I just shook my head. Just thinking how strange it is that something beautiful could grow out of so much wreckage. She stepped closer and kissed me, slow and certain. "That's how new things are born," she whispered. "From the ashes of what didn't work." As time passed, my art became more than just a tool for survival, it became a calling. A small gallery offered to host a solo exhibition. Commissions came in. Even a local cafe asked to feature my work on their walls. It was surreal. I never thought something so painful, that party, that moment with the bowl, that quiet unraveling, would lead me here. But maybe that's how life works. We lose. We fall apart. And if we're lucky, if we're honest, if we keep showing up, something new begins. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm grateful. Not for the betrayal, not for the silence, not for the nights I thought I might drown in grief, but for what those moments revealed. About myself. About what I needed. About what I could survive. And what I could still create from the ruins. Some people walk away from love because it breaks them. I walked away because I finally realized I deserved more than survival. I deserved peace. I deserved someone who saw me fully and chose to stay. And now, every morning I wake up next to Julia, every time her fingers find mine without hesitation, I'm reminded, sometimes the end of one life is just the beginning of another. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, shocked you, or simply made you think, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a comment, your thoughts, your story, your truth. Subscribe for more raw, real, and unforgettable confessions. And if this story made you feel seen, share it. Someone else might need to hear it too. You're not alone here. This channel is a safe space for those who've been betrayed, broken, and rebuilt.